But I grew up in a religious family. I was born and raised in a Catholic family. My parents were actually very good people. And I remember at a very young age getting tired of religion, bored with it. Sin was already taking its toll in my life. And I saw that, and I hated that. I despised it. And at a young age, I actually wanted to change, and I just didn't know how. I was walking to church one day, the Catholic church, and I walked in amazingly thinking, I'd like to walk in those doors and walk out a different person. And I'd never heard the gospel at that point. But I know God was at work in my life as a young man. And a few years later, I went out to college here up in Prescott, Arizona. And, I was one of those people that had it really, I didn't have it together, but people might look at me and say, you got a lot of things going good for you. I was flying airplanes, going to college. I had a pilot slot going into the Air Force when I graduated. I had all those things you would say going for me. But inside, I knew there was something missing. I couldn't put my hand on it, my hand on the pulse. But I wasn't looking for God because I knew what religion was about. But God came looking for me. And the church from Prescott came out, did an outreach on the campus. And I saw one of those big 3 movies. Coming from a religious background as I did, I knew nothing about the Bible really. And really it was frightening. It was frightening. It was like cold water in my face, the end time stuff. And but there was someone there that witnessed to me before I left that scene. And I knew they had it. I knew I walked out knowing that they had what I was looking for. But God was so faithful, He sent a young man on my lunch breaks several times. I'll never forget them. He shared with me about being born again. He shared me with the rapture. He shared with me about, is your name written in the Lamb's Book of Life? And I was like a dry sponge just soaking this all up. And God was preparing my heart. And I remember waking up some mornings, and thinking, what rut am I going to fall into today? What hole, spiritually speaking, And I wasn't really spiritual, but I'm just thinking, what am I going to fall into today? And I remember a friend back home got saved, and that really blew me away. I actually brought a Bible with me to school and started reading it, and it seemed like the days I read my Bible, the days were pretty good. The days I didn't read it, it was awful. Anyways, God was directing my life, and long story short, the church came back out. They did an outreach on the campus. They showed a movie. That night I saw a poster, and I didn't know it was the church. I just saw this thing, and I thought, I need to go to that. And I went to it, and I knew I walked in that place, and it's like God was there. I could tell I was right where I needed to be. I just didn't understand it all. But at the end of that movie, there was a man that stood up and said, is there anyone here you want a new start in life? And God knows you. He knows where you're at. He knows what you're looking for. And for that man to say those words, that was just for me. And I remember when I responded, I was so terribly nervous, my hands shaking, sweating. I put my arm down like, what's going on? But I remember going forward, and I told this person that prayed with me, wanted to pray with me, I said, I don't know how to pray. But he said a sinner's prayer. I said that prayer, and like Pastor Campbell said so many times, 20-second prayer, it changed my life forever. I got off that floor, and I was forgiven. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from the Boston area. I know what blizzards are like. I know what it's like to be in a whiteout, a storm. But inside my heart, I felt just like that. Everything was white. It was all clean. All the sin that I just was so ashamed of and I wanted to get rid of, but I couldn't, it was gone. And God saved me. And my life has never been the same. It was the best decision I ever made. The best one ever. And I know God spoke that to me because I was in the back row of a gymnasium on a metal seat. And this voice came from behind me and said, this is the best decision you'll ever make. And I turn around and say, who said that? And, looking back now, hindsight, I know God had spoke to me. And I hadn't said a sinner's prayer yet. But, my life's never been the same. 33 years later, He's always faithful. I always haven't been, but He is. He never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And He can change your life And, there's ups and downs, but he'll never leave you nor forsake you. He's been so good, and I would just believe you to say any more. I just thank God for my salvation.